London is a city that never forgives the weak, and tonight, at the Royal Winter Gala, cruelty is wrapped in velvet and diamonds. Look through the freezing rain. That man there, Liam Tate, shivering in a rented suit that has already lost its shape. He is desperate, pushing against the security barriers with a cheap ticket in his hand. His eyes are hungry, staring at the ancient stone arches of Kensington Palace. Only 6 months ago, this very man threw his fiancée out onto the street like a bag of rubbish, on the coldest night of October. But Liam does not know that just a few meters away, behind the tinted privacy glass of the Rolls-Royce Phantom gliding past him, is a pair of eyes watching his every move. Clara Evans, or as she is known tonight, Lady Clara. She sits in silence, surrounded by the scent of old leather and bergamot. She lightly touches the heirloom sapphire tiara on her perfectly pinned hair. Her heart no longer races with pain. It has turned into a frozen lake. She takes a sip of red wine and watches her wretched ex-husband. He cannot see her, but she sees right through him. The heavy car door is opened by a guard in white gloves. The cold air rushes in, but Clara does not shiver, because she knows. The moment her heel touches this red carpet, that man's life is over. This is not a fairy tale about Cinderella finding a prince. This is a story about a queen who learned to kill her past to protect her throne. And the sweetest revenge is standing where your enemy can only dream of reaching. Do you want to witness the moment he collapses at her feet? Comment number 1 below to unlock this royal secret with me. The air inside the boutique on Savile Row did not smell like the rest of London. It did not smell of exhaust fumes or damp pavement. It smelled of cedarwood, of crisp linen, and of quiet arrogance. Soft jazz played in the background, the kind of music that seems to whisper, "You do not belong here unless you are rich." Clara stood near a display of cufflinks, trying to make herself as small as possible. She clutched a silk tie in her hand. It was a deep burgundy colour, Italian silk. The price tag read £150. That was exactly the amount she had saved by skipping lunch for the last 3 months. She looked down at her own shoes. They were scuffed at the toes, cheap leather boots that had seen 3 harsh winters. Her coat was thin, frayed at the hem. She had walked 20 minutes from the tube station in the drizzle to save the cab fare, because every penny mattered, because Liam needed to look the part. He had told her this morning, "Clara, darling, this interview is my big break. If I look like a partner, they will make me a partner." And she believed him. She always believed him. For 10 years. She had been the foundation beneath his feet, the one who paid the bills while he chased his dreams, the one who wore rags so he could wear riches. She squeezed the tie tighter, imagining how handsome he would look in it, how his eyes would light up when he saw it. "Excuse me, madam." A sales assistant with impeccable hair and a cold stare appeared beside her. "Are you going to purchase that, or are you just holding it?" Clara flushed. Her face felt hot. "Yes, my fiancé is trying on a suit in the back. I am just waiting for him." The assistant looked her up and down. Her gaze lingered on Clara's worn-out boots. A flicker of disdain crossed her face. "Very well. Please try not to wrinkle the silk." She turned on her heel and walked away. Clara let out a breath she did not know she was holding. It did not matter. None of it mattered. Once Liam got this job, everything would change. They would have a house, a garden, maybe even a wedding. She smiled faintly to herself. Approaching the changing rooms at the back of the store, the heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight. Silence hung in the air. But then she heard it. A sound that shattered the elegant atmosphere. A giggle. It was not a polite laugh. It was high-pitched, teasing, and disturbingly familiar. Clara froze. Her hand hovered mid-air, just inches from the velvet fabric. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Liam," she whispered, "are you okay in there?" Silence. Then a man's voice, low and husky. Liam's voice, but he was not talking to her. "Be quiet, darling," he murmured. "That stupid girl might be out there. Let me just get the money from her for the suit first, then we can celebrate." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Her legs went numb. Another voice replied, a woman's voice, lazy and arrogant. Sarah. The daughter of the real estate tycoon Liam had been trying to impress. "You are terrible, Liam," Sarah laughed. The sound of fabric rustling followed, the sound of a kiss, wet and sloppy. Clara stood there, paralysed. The burgundy tie in her hand felt heavy like a stone. She was not just holding a piece of silk anymore. She was holding the evidence of her own foolishness. She had starved herself to feed a monster. She had walked in the rain so he could stay dry in the arms of another woman. Slowly, very slowly, Clara reached out. Her fingers trembled as they gripped the edge of the curtain. She did not rip it open, not yet. She just stood there, listening to the destruction of her life. That velvet curtain did not just hide an affair. It hid the collapse of a belief she had spent 10 years building. The air inside the boutique on Savile Row did not smell like the rest of London. It did not smell of exhaust fumes or damp pavement. It smelled of cedarwood, of crisp linen, and of quiet arrogance. Soft jazz played in the background, the kind of music that seems to whisper, "You do not belong here unless you are rich." Clara stood near a display of cufflinks, trying to make herself as small as possible. She clutched a silk tie in her hand. It was a deep burgundy colour, Italian silk. The price tag read £150. That was exactly the amount she had saved by skipping lunch for the last 3 months. She looked down at her own shoes. They were scuffed at the toes. Cheap leather boots that had seen 3 harsh winters. Her coat was thin, frayed at the hem. She had walked 20 minutes from the tube station in the drizzle to save the cab fare, because every penny mattered, because Liam needed to look the part. He had told her this morning. "Clara, darling, this interview is my big break. If I look like a partner, they will make me a partner." And she believed him. She always believed him. For 10 years. She had been the foundation beneath his feet, the one who paid the bills while he chased his dreams, the one who wore rags so he could wear riches. She squeezed the tie tighter, imagining how handsome he would look in it, how his eyes would light up when he saw it. "Excuse me, madam." A sales assistant with impeccable hair and a cold stare appeared beside her. "Are you going to purchase that, or are you just holding it?" Clara flushed. Her face felt hot. "Yes, my fiancé is trying on a suit in the back. I am just waiting for him." The assistant looked her up and down. Her gaze lingered on Clara's worn-out boots. A flicker of disdain crossed her face. "Very well. Please try not to wrinkle the silk." She turned on her heel and walked away. Clara let out a breath she did not know she was holding. It did not matter. None of it mattered. Once Liam got this job, everything would change. They would have a house, a garden, maybe even a wedding. She smiled faintly to herself. Approaching the changing rooms at the back of the store, the heavy velvet curtains were drawn tight. Silence hung in the air. But then she heard it, a sound that shattered the elegant atmosphere. A giggle. It was not a polite laugh. It was high-pitched, teasing, and disturbingly familiar. Clara froze. Her hand hovered mid-air, just inches from the velvet fabric. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "Liam," she whispered, "are you okay in there?" Silence. Then a man's voice, low and husky. Liam's voice, but he was not talking to her. "Be quiet, darling," he murmured. "That stupid girl might be out there. Let me just get the money from her for the suit first, then we can celebrate." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. Her legs went numb. Another voice replied, a woman's voice, lazy and arrogant. Sarah, the daughter of the real estate tycoon Liam had been trying to impress. "You are terrible, Liam," Sarah laughed. The sound of fabric rustling followed, the sound of a kiss, wet and sloppy. Clara stood there, paralysed. The burgundy tie in her hand felt heavy, like a stone. She was not just holding a piece of silk anymore. She was holding the evidence of her own foolishness. She had starved herself to feed a monster. She had walked in the rain so he could stay dry in the arms of another woman. Slowly, very slowly, Clara reached out. Her fingers trembled as they gripped the edge of the curtain. She did not rip it open, not yet. She just stood there, listening to the destruction of her life. That velvet curtain did not just hide an affair. It hid the collapse of a belief she had spent 10 years building. Clara's hand tightened on the velvet curtain. Then she pulled, hard. The metal ring screeched against the rail like a scream cut short. The heavy fabric flew back, revealing the ugly truth in the harsh light of the dressing room mirror. Liam jumped back. His shirt was unbuttoned halfway down his chest. His face was flushed, not with shame, but with annoyance. Sarah was sitting on the small ottoman. She did not even flinch. She simply crossed her legs and smoothed down her expensive skirt, looking at Clara as if she were a waitress who had brought the wrong order. "Clara," Liam snapped. His voice was sharp, accusing. "What do you think you're doing, barging in here like a mad woman?" Clara blinked. The air in the room felt suddenly thin, suffocating. She held up the burgundy tie, her hand shaking so violently that the silk shimmered. "I brought you this," she whispered. Her voice sounded foreign to her own ears. "I skipped meals for 3 months to buy you this." Liam looked at the tie. Then he looked at her, and he laughed. A cold, dry laugh. "Oh, grow up, Clara," he sneered. Buttoning his shirt with casual slowness. "Do not be so dramatic. Look at you. You are pathetic. You think a cheap tie makes us equal. You do not fit in my world, Clara. You never did. You are just a teacher, a nobody. I need someone who can help me climb, not someone I have to drag up the mountain on my back." He gestured towards Sarah. "Sarah can open doors for me that you cannot even knock on." Clara felt a physical blow to her chest. It was not heartbreak. It was the shock of seeing a stranger wearing the face of the man she loved. This was gaslighting in its purest form. He was twisting the knife, making her feel guilty for his betrayal. Sarah stood up then. She walked over to her handbag, a designer piece that cost more than Clara's annual salary. She pulled out a crisp £50 note. She did not hand it to Clara. She dropped it. It fluttered through the air like a dying leaf and landed on the dusty floor, right next to Clara's muddy boots. "Here," Sarah said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Take a taxi home, and please, do not make a scene in the shop. It is so dreadfully lower class." Liam smirked. "Go on, Clara, take it. You need the money, do you not? Considering I am not paying your rent anymore." Time stopped. The only sound was the jazz music outside, mocking her. Clara looked down at the money, then at the tie in her hand, the symbol of her love, her sacrifice, her stupidity. She let the tie drop. It fell right on top of the money, covering the Queen's face on the banknote with deep red silk. She looked up, meeting Liam's eyes one last time. There were no tears in her eyes now, only a terrifying emptiness. "I may be poor, Liam," she said softly, "but I am not cheap. And you are worth less than the dirt on my boots." She turned around, leaving the tie, the money, and 10 years of her life on that changing room floor. She walked out, past the shocked sales assistant, into the cold London afternoon. He had taken her youth, he had taken her trust, but she would not let him take the last shred of her dignity, even if at that moment she was completely empty-handed. London rain is not like rain anywhere else in the world. It does not cleanse, it consumes. It soaks into the grey pavement, into the brick walls, and tonight it soaks straight into Clara's bones. She was walking through Hyde Park, or rather, she was dragging herself through it. Her suitcase had a broken wheel. It made a rhythmic scraping sound against the wet asphalt. Scrape, click, scrape, click. The sound of her life falling apart. Liam had thrown her out without a coat. She was wearing only a thin cardigan, drenched, heavy with water, her hair plastered to her face, shivering so violently her teeth chattered. She found a bench under a large oak tree. The wood was rot and cold, but she sat down anyway. She did not cry. She was too cold to cry. She just stared at the darkness, wondering how 10 years of love could vanish in 10 minutes. Wondering where she would sleep tonight. Maybe she would just sit here until she froze, until the cold numbed the pain in her chest. Then, through the curtain of rain, 2 beams of light cut through the dark. A car. Not a taxi, not a police car, but a vintage Rolls-Royce, black and sleek like a panther. It looked out of place in this desolate park, like a ghost from another era. The car slowed down and stopped right in front of the path leading to the Serpentine Lake. Clara watched, too tired to be curious. The passenger door opened. An elderly woman stepped out. She was dressed in impeccable wool, a silk scarf around her head. But she looked frail, like a porcelain doll left out in a storm. A driver scrambled out from the front, an old man, white-haired, panic etched on his face. "My lady, please, get back inside. The doctor said you must rest." The old woman waved him away with a stubborn hand. "Hush, Charles. It is the anniversary. I promised him I would visit our tree." She took 2 steps, her heels sinking into the wet earth. She looked up at the old oak tree, her eyes filled with a lifetime of memories. And then the memory turned into agony. Her hand flew to her chest, clutched the expensive brooch pinned there, her face twisted, a gasp of pain that was swallowed by the wind. She crumbled, falling onto the muddy grass like a cut flower. "My lady!" the old driver screamed. He rushed to her, but he was frail too. His knees buckled as he tried to lift her. He was shaking, terrified, fumbling for a phone with wet, slippery fingers. He dropped it in a puddle. "Help! Somebody help! Please!" His voice was thin, weak against the roar of the rain. Clara did not think. She did not decide. Her body just moved. She left her broken suitcase. She left her misery on the bench. And she ran, her boots splashing through the puddles. She slid onto her knees beside the fallen woman. Mud splattered up her legs. "Move back," Clara shouted over the rain. "I know CPR." The driver stared at her, wide-eyed, paralysed. Clara placed her hands on the woman's chest, right over the sternum. She could feel the expensive wool of the coat, and beneath it, a heart that was failing. "Come on," Clara gritted her teeth. "Stay with me." She began to pump, hard, fast. 1, 2, 3, 4, staying to the rhythm of staying alive. It was exhausting work. Her arms burned. Rain dripped from her nose onto the woman's pale face. "Call 999, now!" she yelled at the driver. He snapped out of his trance, scrambling to find his phone in the mud. The woman on the ground was not breathing. Her lips were turning blue. Clara did not stop. She leaned down, pinched the woman's nose, and breathed air into her mouth. The taste of rain and old lipstick. Then back to compressions. "You are not dying tonight," Clara whispered fiercely. "I did not lose everything today just to watch someone else die." She pushed harder. Her muddy hands interlocked with the woman's limp hand, a hand adorned with a diamond ring the size of a quail's egg. Mud and diamonds, poverty and royalty, in the mud. They were just two women fighting the reaper. Suddenly, a gasp. The old woman's body arched. She coughed, a ragged, weak sound, but the most beautiful sound Clara had ever heard. "She is back! She is breathing!" the driver sobbed, collapsing in relief. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting louder. Clara sat back on her heels, gasping for air. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably now. The old woman's eyes fluttered open. Grey eyes, sharp, even in pain. They found Clara's face. She squeezed Clara's muddy hand, weakly, but with surprising strength. "Who are you?" she whispered. Clara looked down, wet, dirty, homeless. "I am no one," Clara whispered back. But in the darkest night of her life, when Clara thought all her lights had gone out, destiny had just lit a candle in a way she never expected. Do you believe that when one door closes, a castle gate opens? If you want to see what happens inside that castle, comment number 1 below. The private wing of St. Thomas's Hospital was quiet. It was not the chaotic silence of a waiting room. It was the expensive silence of money. The kind of silence that thick carpets and heavy oak doors provide. Room 101 smelled of lilies and strong antiseptic, a strange mix of funeral flowers and medical sterility. Clara sat on a velvet armchair in the corner. She looked painfully out of place. Her clothes were still damp and stained with mud from the park. Her hair was a mess. She held a cup of lukewarm tea in her hands, trying to stop her fingers from trembling. She should have left hours ago. The doctors had taken over. The crisis was past. But she had nowhere to go. No home, no fiancé, no money for a hotel. And more than that, she could not bear the thought of leaving the old woman alone. She looked at the figure in the bed, so small beneath the crisp white sheets. Wires and tubes monitored every heartbeat. Clara sighed softly. She leaned her head back and closed her eyes for just a second. "You are ruining the upholstery." A voice cut through the silence, weak but sharp as a razor blade. Clara jumped. She spilled a little tea on her jeans. The old woman was awake, watching her with those piercing grey eyes. I'm so sorry," Clara stammered, standing up quickly. "I will leave immediately. I just wanted to make sure you were stable." "Sit down," the woman commanded. It was not a request. Clara sat. The woman adjusted her oxygen mask slightly. "Why are you still here, girl? Did Charles not pay you?" Clara frowned. "Pay me?" "For saving me. Everyone wants something. The paramedics want a donation. The doctors want prestige. My nephew wants my inheritance. So what do you want? A reward?" Clara felt a flash of anger. It warmed her cold chest. She placed the teacup down on the table with a soft clink. "I do not want your money," Clara said quietly. I stayed because I saw how you looked at that tree in the park. You looked lonely, and I know what that feels like. Tonight, I am lonely too. I just didn't want you to wake up in a room full of machines without a human face nearby." The old woman stared at her. She studied Clara's face, searching for the lie, searching for the greed that she saw in everyone else's eyes. But she found nothing, only exhaustion and a raw, honest sadness. The woman's expression softened, just a fraction. "What is your name?" "Clara, Clara Evans." "Well, Clara Evans, you look terrible." Clara let out a short, dry laugh. "I feel terrible. My fiancé threw me out today. I have lost my home, my dignity, and now I am muddying up a VIP hospital room." The old woman looked at the mud on Clara's boots. Then she looked at her own hand, the hand Clara had held so tightly in the mud. "He is a fool," the woman said, "and you are a mess." She pressed a button on the side of her bed. The heavy oak door opened instantly. Charles, the old driver, stepped in, looking recovered but anxious. "My lady?" "Charles, Miss Evans is not leaving," the woman said firmly. "Prepare the guest suite at the manor and get her some dry clothes. She smells like a wet dog." Clara blinked. "Wait, what? I cannot." "Do not argue with me, child. I am the Duchess of Harrington, and I hate owing debts. You saved my life. The least I can do is give you a warm bed for the night." The Duchess closed her eyes again, hiding a flicker of emotion. "Besides, it has been a long time since someone held my hand without checking for a pulse or a diamond ring." Clara looked at the sleeping woman, then at the kind face of Charles, who was smiling at her. She realized then, this room was not just a hospital room, it was a crossroads. One person who had everything but was lonely, and one who lost everything but was rich in compassion. Two broken pieces had accidentally found each other, and perhaps, just perhaps, they could fit together. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Harrington Manor, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Clara sat at a breakfast table long enough to seat 20 people. She was wearing a silk robe that Charles, the butler, had provided. It felt too soft against her skin, too luxurious for a woman whose life had fallen apart just yesterday. She stared into her black coffee, trying to piece together her reality. At the head of the table sat the Duchess. She looked different today. Gone was the frail woman in the rain. In her place sat a matriarch, spine straight, silver hair perfectly coiffed. She was buttering a piece of toast with surgical precision. "You are wondering if this is a dream," the Duchess said without looking up. Clara gripped her cup. "It feels like one. Yesterday I was a teacher. Today I am here." "You are safe here, for now." The Duchess slid a tablet across the polished mahogany table. It stopped right in front of Clara. "But out there, the world has not stopped turning just because your heart is broken. In fact, it seems to be celebrating." Clara looked down at the screen. Her breath hitched. It was a headline from the Daily Mail. "Rags to Riches Romance. Liam Tate and Sarah Miller announce whirlwind engagement." There was a photo. Liam, holding a glass of champagne, his arm around Sarah's waist. He was wearing the suit Clara had paid for, the tie she had bought him, and he was smiling, a smile of triumph, not a hint of guilt. "They announced it this morning," the Duchess said calmly, taking a sip of tea. "He did not waste time mourning you, did he?" Clara felt a scream building in her throat, but it got stuck. It turned into a burning lump of coal. "He told the press you were holding him back," the Duchess continued, her voice devoid of pity. He called you simple, unambitious. He is painting himself as the victim who finally escaped a dead-end relationship. Clara's hand shook. A tear fell onto the screen, right on Liam's face. "Why are you showing me this?" Clara whispered. "Because I need you to understand one thing, Clara. Tears do not move men like him. Only power moves men like him." The Duchess stood up. She walked over to the window, looking out at her vast estate. "I have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" "Look at all this," she gestured to the room, "the gardens, the wealth. I have no children. My husband is dead. My only living relative is a nephew who is currently waiting for me to die so he can turn this manor into a golf course. He is a vulture, just like your Liam." She turned back to Clara. Her eyes were steel. "I need an heir, someone I can trust, someone who owes me everything and therefore will betray me for nothing. I need a shield to protect my legacy." Clara wiped her cheek. "And what do I need?" "You need a sword," the Duchess replied. "You're a smart girl, Clara, but you are weak. You have no money, no connections, no status. If you go out there now, Liam will crush you. He will rewrite your history and leave you as nothing more than a footnote in his success story." The Duchess walked closer, leaning down so she was eye level with Clara. "But what if I gave you a new name? What if I taught you how to walk, how to talk, how to think like us? What if Lady Clara returned to London not as a discarded teacher, but as the heiress to the Harrington fortune?" Clara looked at the tablet again, at Liam's smug smile. She remembered the £50 note on the floor, the humiliation, the cold rain. Something inside her clicked, like a lock snapping shut. The sadness evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard resolve. "What is the price?" Clara asked, her voice steady. "Your past," the Duchess said. "You have to kill Clara the teacher. She was too nice. She let people walk all over her. If you want revenge, if you want justice, you must become someone else entirely. Can you do that?" Clara looked at her reflection in the dark window. She saw a tired, broken girl. She hated that girl. She raised her hand and wiped the last tear from her cheek. It was the last tear she would ever shed for Liam Tate. "Teach me," Clara said. "Teach me how to destroy him." The Duchess smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a general who had just found her best soldier. "Excellent. Finish your coffee, my dear. We have a lot of work to do." In that moment, the teacher died, and the Avenger was born. Do you think Clara is making a deal with the devil, or is she becoming the devil herself? Comment number 1 if you are ready for her transformation. People think that transformation is a magical process, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. They are wrong. Transformation is violence. It is breaking bones to reset them. It is stripping away the skin to grow a new layer. And for Clara, it was hell. The next 3 months were not spent in ballrooms. They were spent in the mud of the paddock and the cold silence of the library. "Heels down, chin up, look between the ears," the riding instructor shouted. A retired cavalry officer who did not believe in brakes. Clara was thrown from the horse again. She hit the ground hard. The breath knocked out of her lungs. Her body ached. Every muscle screamed in protest. Her legs were covered in bruises that ranged from purple to ugly yellow. She lay in the dirt, gasping, staring at the grey sky. "Get up," the instructor barked. "A duchess does not wallow in the mud. Get up." Clara gritted her teeth. She forced her trembling limbs to move. She climbed back into the saddle. Then came the etiquette lessons. They were worse than the riding. She had to walk for hours up and down the long gallery, with a heavy, leather-bound encyclopedia balanced on her head. "Grace, Clara, grace!" the Duchess would say from her armchair. You walk like a pedestrian rushing for a bus. Walk like you own the ground beneath your feet. If the book fell, she had to start again, from the beginning. Her neck was stiff, her back burned with the effort of maintaining an unnatural, perfect posture. Then there was the cello. The Duchess insisted she learn an instrument. It teaches discipline, she said. Clara's fingers were raw, the strings cut into her soft skin until they bled. She taped them up and kept playing. One night, it all became too much. It was 2 a.m. Clara was in the music room, practicing a piece by Bach. Her fingers slipped. A discordant note screeched through the room. She threw the bow down. It clattered loudly on the wooden floor. She sank to her knees, burying her face in her hands. I cannot do this, she sobbed into the silence. I am just a teacher. I am just Clara. I cannot be who she wants me to be. She wanted to pack her bags. She wanted to run away, to find a small flat somewhere and hide. But then, in the darkness of her mind, a voice echoed. You do not fit in my world, Clara. You are nobody. Liam's voice. She saw his face, his sneer. She saw Sarah dropping that £50 note. She felt the cold rain of that night in the park. If she quit now... Liam was right. If she quit now... She was just the pathetic girl he threw away. Clara slowly lowered her hands. She looked at the cello bow lying on the floor. She wiped her eyes, roughly, angrily. She stood up. Her legs were sore. Her fingers were throbbing, but her eyes were dry. She picked up the bow. She sat back down, and she began to play again. The music was no longer hesitant. It was fierce, angry, powerful. She played until the sun came up. She realized then that pain was not a signal to stop. It was the price of admission. To become a phoenix, one must accept the agony of burning oneself in the most painful fire. The physical bruises healed, but the mental surgery had just begun. They moved from the stables to the drawing room, a room filled with mirrors, where Clara had to face herself and learn to hate the girl she used to be. Open your mouth, the Duchess commanded. Enunciate. The letter T is not optional in the English language, Clara. It is water, not wa-er. Stop swallowing your consonants like a hungry peasant. Clara repeated the words over and over again until her jaw ached. She had to strip away her warm regional accent, the accent of a friendly schoolteacher, and replace it with received pronunciation, the Queen's English, glassy, polished, and utterly devoid of emotion. Again, the Duchess tapped her cane on the floor. You sound approachable. That is a mistake. You are not here to make friends. You are here to rule. Then came the lessons on smiling. Clara stood before the tall gilt mirror. She smiled, a wide, genuine smile that crinkled her eyes. Stop that, the Duchess snapped. You look like a spaniel begging for a treat. Why are you smiling so broadly? Because it is polite, Clara ventured. It is desperate, the Duchess corrected. You smile to please people, to make them like you. That is the habit of the lower classes. A lady does not need to be liked. She needs to be respected. She stood next to Clara, looking at their reflections. Lower your chin slightly. Look through your lashes and smile with your mouth closed. A small curve of the lips, just enough to acknowledge their existence, but not enough to invite them in. Clara tried. It felt unnatural, cold. Good, the Duchess nodded. Now, the eyes. When you look at Liam, do not look at him with anger. Anger shows that you still care. Anger means he still has power over you. Then how do I look at him? Look at him with indifference. Look at him as if he were a piece of furniture that is slightly out of style. Boredom, Clara. Boredom is the ultimate insult. Days turned into weeks. Clara practiced the art of silence. She learned how to hold a teacup without rattling the saucer, how to walk into a room and wait for others to approach her. One afternoon, during high tea, Clara was reading a book. The Duchess asked her a question. Clara, if Liam approaches you at the gala and demands an explanation, what will you do? Clara did not look up immediately. She turned the page of her book, slowly, deliberately. Then she raised her eyes, cool and detached. I will ask him to lower his voice, because I do not speak the language of desperation. The room went silent. The Duchess stared at her. For the first time, she did not correct Clara. She did not tap her cane. Instead, a slow smile spread across the old woman's face. You are ready, the Duchess whispered. You have learned the most important lesson of all. Quyền lực không phải là gào thét. Power is not shouting. Power is when you whisper, and the whole room holds its breath to listen. Clara closed her book. I am not shouting anymore, grandmother. Her voice was low, rich. It sounded like expensive dark chocolate. I am done shouting. The transformation was complete. The warm, bubbly teacher was gone. Her voice no longer trembled. It had become a blade wrapped in velvet, and it was sharp enough to draw blood. If you are rooting for Clara's comeback, tap the like button to give her strength. 6 months. 180 days. That was how long it took to erase a human being and build a new one from scratch. Winter had returned to London, outside the window. Snow was falling softly on the manicured gardens of the Harrington estate. Inside the dressing room, Clara stood before a floor-length mirror. She was holding her breath. She did not recognize the woman staring back at her. Gone were the frizzy hair and the anxious eyes. Gone were the cheap cardigans and the scuffed boots. The woman in the mirror was a stranger. Her hair was swept up in an intricate chignon, revealing the elegant curve of a neck that now held itself high with natural pride. She was wearing a gown of deep royal blue velvet. It was cut to perfection, hugging her waist and flowing down like a waterfall of midnight. It was the colour of royalty, the colour of power. Clara raised a hand to touch the cold glass. Her fingers were manicured, smooth. There was no trace of ink stains or chalk dust anymore. Do you like her? The Duchess's voice came from the doorway. Clara did not turn around. She kept her eyes locked on her reflection. I do not know her, Clara replied. Her voice was steady, low. She looks dangerous. She is dangerous. The Duchess stepped into the room. She was carrying a black velvet box, old and worn at the edges. Clara Evans was a victim. This woman, she pointed at the reflection, this woman is a predator. The Duchess opened the box. Inside lay the Harrington sapphires, a necklace of heavy dark blue stones surrounded by diamonds, matching earrings that caught the light like frozen tears. These belong to my great-grandmother, the Duchess said softly. She wore them to the coronation of Queen Victoria. They have never been worn by anyone outside the bloodline. Clara turned around. Why give them to me? I'm just a fake heiress. Blood does not make you family, Clara. Loyalty does. And shared pain does. The Duchess lifted the necklace. The cold metal touched Clara's skin, sending a shiver down her spine, but she did not flinch. The Duchess fastened the clasp. There. She stepped back to admire her creation. Now you look like you own the city. On the dressing table lay a thick envelope, cream-coloured paper, gold lettering. It was the invitation to the Royal Charity Gala, the event of the season, the event Liam had been desperate to attend for years. Clara picked it up. It felt heavy in her hand, like a loaded gun. "Are you nervous?" the Duchess asked. Clara looked at the invitation. Then she looked at the sapphires glowing around her neck. She remembered the woman who had cried in the rain. That woman was gone, buried under layers of silk and secrets. "No," Clara said. A small, cold smile played on her lips. "I am not nervous. I am impatient." The Duchess laughed, a dry, satisfied sound. "Good. The car is waiting, the press is waiting, and he is waiting." Clara took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of expensive perfume and cold winter air. The rehearsals were over, the training wheels were off. "Let us go, grandmother," Clara said. "It is time to rewrite the ending of my story." The stage was set, the lights were dimmed. Now, it was time for the lead actress to step into the light. While Clara was fastening diamonds around her neck in the silent halls of tradition, Liam Tate was standing in the middle of Sarah's glass-walled penthouse in Canary Wharf. The apartment was not cramped, it was massive, cold, and screamed of new money. But Liam felt small in it. He looked at his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling window. Everything around him belonged to Sarah. The Italian leather sofa, the modern art that made no sense. Even the scotch she was drinking was paid for by her father. He hated it. He hated feeling like a pet. "Tonight changes everything," he whispered to himself, adjusting his bow tie with sweating hands. "Tonight I get the funding. Tonight I become the man who owns the penthouse, not the man who visits it." He checked his watch. A Rolex. Fake. Because Sarah's father had refused to lend him the real one. On the glass coffee table lay 2 crumpled tickets. Liam stared at them hungrily. He had insisted on buying them himself, to prove a point, to show Sarah's family that he was a serious investor, not just a gold digger. £3,000, borrowed from a loan shark he met at a poker game. If this deal with the Duke didn't happen tonight, he was a dead man walking. "Liam, do I look like a queen?" Sarah walked into the room. She was wearing a dress that cost more than Liam's entire education. It was bright pink, covered in aggressive sequins, and far too tight. "You look expensive, darling," Liam lied, forcing a smile. "Now come on, the car is waiting. I paid extra for the extended waiting time." They took the lift down to the lobby. A hired stretched limousine was waiting. It looked impressive from the outside, but inside it smelled of stale champagne and cheap air freshener. Liam sat on the edge of the leather seat. He checked his phone. A text message from the rental company. "Payment pending. Please ensure funds are available." He swiped it away quickly before Sarah could see. His heart hammered against his ribs. He had maxed out 3 credit cards to pay for this night. The suit, the car, the image. It was a house of cards waiting to collapse. "Liam," Sarah whined, kicking off her heels on the seat opposite. "Daddy said this gala is boring. Why do we have to go? We could just go to the club." "Because, Sarah," Liam snapped, losing his patience. "Because the Duke of Westminster will be there, and when I shake his hand, when he invests in my fund, your father will finally stop looking at me like I am the hired help." Sarah rolled her eyes, bored. She didn't understand desperation. She had never been hungry a day in her life. Liam looked out at the rainy London streets. For a second he thought of Clara. Clara, who used to make him tea when he was stressed. Clara, who believed in him even when he was broke. She was weak, he muttered, shaking the thought away. She was happy with nothing. I want everything. The car slowed down near Kensington Palace. Liam saw the lights, the photographers, the grandeur. His greed flared up, silencing his fear. He straightened his jacket. He was going to walk onto that red carpet. He was going to act like he owned the place, and he was going to pretend that his entire life wasn't hanging by a single, fraying thread. He was a climber, and he didn't care who he had to step on to reach the top, even if the ground beneath him was already crumbling. The entrance to the Royal Charity Gala was a battlefield, not of soldiers, but of egos. It was raining harder now. The red carpet was reserved for the A-list guests. For everyone else, there was the pavement and the queue. Liam and Sarah found themselves squeezed between a hedge and a metal barrier, surrounded by minor celebrities and desperate social climbers just like them. The air smelled of wet wool and anxiety. "Stop pushing!" Sarah shrieked as a heavy-set man in a tuxedo elbowed her ribs. "These are Louboutins! They cost more than your car!" Liam tried to maintain his composure, but sweat was trickling down his back. His rented suit was getting damp at the shoulders. He saw a security guard near the VIP rope, a large man with a face like a bulldog. Liam waved his hand, trying to look important. "Excuse me, officer, there has been a mistake. We are on the list. Liam Tate, Tate Investments." The guard did not even blink. He looked at Liam with bored, heavy eyes. "Back of the line, mate. General admission is that way." He pointed a gloved thumb towards a muddy patch of grass where tourists were standing. Liam's face turned purple. "Do you know who I am? I am meeting the Duke inside. If you make me wait in the rain, you will lose your job." The guard let out a dry chuckle. "I doubt that, sir. Move along. You are blocking the entrance for important people." Liam opened his mouth to scream, but then flashbulbs erupted. The paparazzi pit went wild. Liam straightened up, thinking they had recognized him. He grabbed Sarah's arm. "Smile, darling. They are taking photos of us." He flashed his practiced winning smile, but the cameras were not pointed at him. They were pointed over his shoulder, at a famous actress who had just arrived. A cameraman actually shoved Liam aside. "Out of the way! You are ruining the shot!" Liam stumbled back into the metal barrier, humiliated, invisible. He was standing right there, but he did not exist in their world. Sarah was pouting, checking her phone. "This is ridiculous, Liam. My hair is going flat. Let's just go home." "Shut up," Liam hissed. "We are not going anywhere. We are going inside if I have to bribe every single—" Suddenly, the air changed. A sound cut through the chaos like a knife. Sirens. Not the urgent wail of an ambulance, but the authoritative, rhythmic pulse of a police escort. Blue lights flashed against the wet stone walls of the palace. Motorcycles roared, clearing the street with military precision. "Move back! Move back immediately!" The security guards suddenly became alert, pushing Liam and the crowd back aggressively against the walls. "Make way for the royal convoy!" The chatter died down. Even the arrogant actress stopped posing. A hush fell over the crowd. It was the heavy silence of true power. 3 police motorcycles swept past, followed by a black Range Rover full of security detail. And then, the centerpiece. A vintage Rolls-Royce Phantom 6. It moved slowly, majestically. The Royal Standard flag fluttered on the bonnet. The crowd held its breath. Liam stood on his tiptoes, craning his neck, trying to see who was inside. The windows were tinted black, impenetrable, but he could feel the weight of the person inside. The car glided past him, so close he could touch it, but it felt a million miles away. The mud splattered on his shoes from the car's wheels felt like an insult. Liam looked at the gleaming vehicle, then down at his own wet, rented trousers. He realized something bitter in that moment. You can buy a suit, you can buy a ticket, but you cannot buy the silence that commands a crowd. There are distances in this world not measured in miles, but measured in class. Who is inside that car? Is it the ghost of his past coming to haunt him? Comment number 2 if you want to see the door open. The vintage Rolls-Royce Phantom came to a halt exactly at the centre of the red carpet. The engine purred into silence. For a moment, nothing happened. The world seemed to pause. Even the rain felt like it was holding its breath. Liam was standing on his tiptoes, crushed against the metal barrier by the weight of the crowd, his neck craning, his eyes wide with jealousy and curiosity. "Who is it?" Sarah muttered, checking her makeup in her phone camera. Probably some old Duchess, boring. But Liam did not look away. He felt a strange pull, a magnetic force radiating from that black metal beast. Then, the front passenger door opened. A footman in full livery stepped out. He walked to the back door with military precision. He opened it. A pair of legs appeared first, slender, wrapped in sheer stockings, ending in heels that looked like shards of crystal. They touched the red carpet with confidence, solid, unwavering. Then, the woman emerged. A collective gasp swept through the crowd. It was audible, like a sudden gust of wind. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet, darker than the sky above. It hugged her frame like a second skin before cascading down in heavy, luxurious folds. It was royal blue, the colour of queens, the colour of authority. Around her neck, the Harrington sapphires drank the light from the flashbulbs and spat it back out in blue fire. She stood tall, shoulders back, chin raised, looking at the chaotic crowd not with fear, but with a serene, terrifying calm. Suddenly, the royal guards stationed at the entrance slammed their heels together. The sound was like a gunshot. "Present arms!" the captain shouted. The soldiers snapped to attention, saluting her. It was a gesture reserved only for the highest blood. Liam felt his knees turn to water. He squinted through the blinding flashes of the paparazzi cameras. He tried to focus on her face. And then he saw it. The profile, the curve of the nose, the shape of the eyes. His heart stopped. It literally missed a beat. He forgot how to breathe. Clara. The name escaped his lips, but it was drowned out by the screams of the photographers. "Lady Harrington, over here! Look to the left, my lady! One smile, please!" Liam shook his head violently. "No," he whispered to himself, his hands gripping the cold metal barrier until his knuckles turned white. "That is impossible. That cannot be her." He looked at Sarah, then back at the woman in blue. His mind began to race, desperately trying to rationalize what he was seeing. Clara was poor. Clara wore cardigans from charity shops. Clara had mousy hair and bit her fingernails when she was nervous. This woman was magnificent. She was a statue carved from ice and diamonds. It must be a doppelganger, he thought, a look-alike. God, I am so stressed. I am hallucinating. But as she began to walk up the red carpet, she turned her head slightly, and for a split second her eyes swept over the crowd. She did not see him, or perhaps she did, and simply chose not to acknowledge a speck of dust. But Liam saw the eyes, grey, intelligent, and hauntingly familiar. A cold sweat broke out on his forehead, mixing with the rain. He remembered throwing her suitcase onto the pavement. He remembered her crying, begging, looking small and broken. How could that broken bird be this phoenix? It defied the laws of nature. It defied the laws of his world. Sarah nudged him. Wow, look at that necklace. I bet it is fake. Who wears jewels that big? Liam did not answer. He could not speak. He felt a wave of nausea. The kind of sickness you feel when you realise you have made a mistake so catastrophic that it cannot be fixed. He watched her glide away from him, towards the warm golden light of the palace entrance, leaving him in the cold, wet dark. He tried to laugh it off, tried to tell himself he was crazy, but deep down in his gut, the fear was taking root, because the resemblance was too strong. She looks like Clara. But his Clara was just a wildflower by the roadside, easy to trample, easy to forget. Whereas this woman is a thorny rose in a forbidden garden. And he had a terrible feeling that he was about to get pricked. The grand ballroom of Kensington Palace was a world away from the cold rain outside. It was a galaxy of golden chandeliers, soft velvet curtains, and the murmur of voices that controlled the economy of entire nations. The air smelled of expensive champagne and old money. Liam and Sarah had managed to slip in. Their shoes left faint, muddy footprints on the pristine marble floor. They stood near the buffet table, holding glasses of orange juice because the champagne waiters seemed to be avoiding them on purpose. Liam was not drinking. His eyes were scanning the room, frantic, like a predator that had suddenly become the prey. "Liam, stop it," Sarah hissed, pulling at his damp sleeve. "You are acting weird. Let's just go find my father." "Quiet," Liam snapped, and then he saw her. She was standing in the centre of the room, surrounded by a circle of admirers, including the Duke of Westminster, the man Liam had been desperate to meet. She was laughing at something the Duke said, a light, elegant sound that tinkled like crystal. She held a flute of champagne with delicate fingers. The sapphire necklace resting on her collarbone pulsed with blue fire under the chandeliers. It was her. It was undeniably her. But at the same time, it wasn't. The Clara he knew slumped her shoulders. This woman stood with the posture of a queen. The Clara he knew apologized for existing. This woman commanded the space around her as if she owned the very air they breathed. Liam felt a surge of irrational anger. How dare she? How dare she look this good after he destroyed her? It felt like a personal insult. Without thinking, driven by a toxic mix of ego and disbelief, Liam pushed through the crowd. He bumped into a countess, spilling her drink. He didn't apologize. He just kept moving, his eyes locked on the woman in blue. "Liam, come back," Sarah called out, but he was deaf to her. He reached the inner circle, breaking the invisible barrier of etiquette. He marched right up to her. Just as she was taking a sip of wine, "Clara," he said. His voice was too loud, too aggressive for this polite setting. The music seemed to stop. The Duke stopped talking. The circle of aristocrats turned to look at the intruder, at his cheap, wet suit, at his sweating face. Clara froze, but only for a microsecond. She lowered her glass slowly. She did not turn her body towards him. She simply turned her head, looking at him over her shoulder, with eyes that were as cold as the Atlantic Ocean. "Excuse me," she said. Her voice was perfect received pronunciation, crisp, polished, detached. "Don't play games with me." Liam stepped closer, invading her personal space. "I know it is you. I know you are wearing a costume, but you are Clara Evans, my fiancé, or ex-fiancé." He looked around the circle of shocked faces, trying to find allies. "She is a fraud," he pointed a shaking finger at her. "She is just a school teacher. She is nobody. I dumped her 6 months ago." Gasps rippled through the room. Sarah had caught up to him now, horrified, trying to pull him back. "Liam, stop! You are drunk!" But Liam shook her off. He looked back at Clara, waiting for her to crumble, waiting for her to cry, to apologize, to be the weak girl he remembered. But she didn't. Clara turned her entire body to face him. She stepped forward. The heels he had heard on the pavement now clicked softly on the marble. She was taller than him in those shoes. She looked down at him, examining him like a scientist examining a bacteria under a microscope. "You seem confused, sir," she said softly. But in the silence of the room, her voice carried to every corner. "My name is Lady Harrington, and I have never met you in my life." "Liar!" Liam shouted, his face turning red. "Look at me! It's Liam! We were together for 10 years! I made you!" Clara smiled. It was the smile the Duchess had taught her. Small, pitying, and absolutely lethal. "If we were together for 10 years, she paused, letting the tension build, "then you would know that I have standards." She gestured vaguely at his wetsuit, at his muddy shoes, at his desperate, sweating face. "And clearly," she continued, "you do not meet them." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not loud laughter, but the polite, cruel snickering of the elite. Liam felt like he was shrinking. "I know it's you," he whispered, his voice breaking. "Clara, please." Clara leaned in close, so only he could hear. The scent of her perfume, expensive, dark, intoxicating, filled his nose. "Liam Tate," she whispered, dropping the facade for just 1 second. "Clara loved you, and you killed her. So do not come looking for her ghost in a place you cannot afford to enter." She pulled back, returning to her icy persona. "Charles," she called out to the butler standing nearby, "please show this gentleman to the exit. I believe he has mistaken the palace for a public pub." "Immediately, my lady." 2 security guards stepped forward, gripping Liam by the arms. "No, get off me! Sarah, tell them!" Liam looked around for Sarah, but Sarah was gone. She had slipped away into the crowd, refusing to be associated with social suicide. The Duke of Westminster looked at Liam with pure disgust. "Dreadful little man," he muttered. Then he turned back to Clara. "My apologies, Lady Harrington. You handled that with remarkable grace." Clara nodded. She took another sip of champagne, watching over the rim of her glass as Liam was dragged away, kicking and screaming like a child. He stood paralysed for a moment before the doors closed, staring back at her across the glittering hall. And in that moment, he stood dead silent in the middle of the magnificent hall, realising he had just lost the most precious diamond to exchange it for a handful of worthless gravel. The heavy oak doors of Kensington Palace slammed shut, a final thudding sound that echoed like a judge's gavel. Liam stumbled down the stone steps, his balance lost. He landed hard on the wet pavement, right into a puddle of freezing, dirty water. The rain was pouring down now, a torrential London downpour that soaked through his rented suit in seconds. He gasped, wiping mud from his face. "Sarah!" he shouted, scrambling to his feet. "Sarah, wait! We can fix this! I just need to explain to the Duke." Sarah was standing by the curb, under the shelter of a large umbrella held by a hotel doorman. She looked at Liam, not with anger, but with pure embarrassment. "There is nothing to fix, Liam," she said coldly. "You just humiliated yourself in front of the entire British aristocracy, and you dragged me down with you." "But the investment—" "Forget the investment," she snapped. "My father is going to kill me for being seen with you. You are a social pariah, Liam. Do not call me." She stepped into a waiting taxi. The door slammed and the car drove away, splashing more dirty water onto Liam's trousers. He stood there, alone, shivering in the cold, just like Clara had stood alone 6 months ago. The karma was not poetic, it was brutal. High above him, on the stone balcony of the palace, Clara stood watching. She was shielded from the rain by the stone overhang. In her hand was a glass of vintage Pinot Noir. She looked down at the small, pathetic figure of Liam below. She expected to feel joy. She expected to feel triumph, but she felt nothing. The hate had evaporated, replaced by distant, mild pity. He was not a monster anymore. He was just a man who had made a bad bet and lost everything. "Goodbye, Liam," she whispered, her voice lost in the wind. She took a sip of wine. The taste was rich and complex, just like her new life. She turned her back on the balcony, leaving the rain and the past behind her. She stepped back into the warmth of the golden hall. The Duchess was waiting for her by the fireplace. But the Duchess was not alone. Standing beside her was a man, tall, impeccably dressed in a tuxedo that fit him like armour. He was holding a glass of whiskey. His eyes were dark, calculating, and they were fixed on Clara with a predator's intensity. The Duchess looked up. Her face was serious. "Clara," she said, "I believe it is time you met the reason we are doing all this." She gestured to the man. "This is my nephew, Arthur Harrington." Arthur smiled. It was a sharp smile, dangerous. "So," Arthur said. His voice was smooth, like velvet wrapped around a dagger. "This is the stray cat my aunt dragged in to steal my inheritance." He raised his glass to Clara, mocking her. "Well played tonight, Clara. But getting rid of a weak ex-boyfriend is easy. Getting rid of me will be a war." Clara gripped her wineglass tighter. She looked at the Duchess, then at Arthur. She realised then, Liam was just the warm-up. The real game was just beginning. The rain still falls on London, washing away the dirt of yesterday, and Clara knows the storm has truly passed outside these walls. But a new storm, bigger and more devastating, is forming right here in the drawing room. Do you think Clara is strong enough to face this ruthless lawful heir? Or is she just a pawn in the Duchess's chess game? Leave a comment below if you are ready for part 2, The Family War.